Distinguished guest, Chairman and Board of Directors of the Gamini Korea Foundation, Session Chair, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, to commence this afternoon's sessions by Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe, I would like to introduce our Session Chair, Professor Ranjit Senaratne, Chairman of the National Science Foundation. The panelists are Dr. Herath Gunathilaka, Director of Center for Poverty Analysis, Mr. Sisira Amarasekara, former Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Dr. Frederick Aberatne, former consultant at the United Nations Development Programme, and Dr. Gamini Samarasinghe, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture. Would like to thank you for being here this afternoon with us for the session on agriculture by Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe. So before we commence today's proceedings, I would like to play a small introductory video regarding the Gamini Korea Foundation and its project, the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum. Hope you enjoyed the video.
The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, is an initiative of the Gamini Korea Foundation aimed at meaningfully contributing towards resolving the complex economic issues confronting the country today. The Gamini Korea Foundation was founded to take forward the passion of Dr. Gamini Korea to achieve just and equitable economic development in all countries. The late Dr. Gamini Korea was an internationally renowned Sri Lankan economist and an outstanding product of the universities of Cambridge and Oxford. Born on the 4th of November 1925 to Dr. C.V.S. Korea and Freda Korea, sister of Sir John Kotalavala, the then Prime Minister of Ceylon. Dr. Gamini Korea's grandfather and granduncle were the famous freedom fighters from Chilo, Victor Korea, who was a member of the Legislative Council of Ceylon, and Charles Korea. His uncle, Sir Claude Korea, was at the forefront of Sri Lanka's entry onto the world stage at the independence and for many years thereafter. Gamini Korea was educated at the Royal College Colombo, after which he started his higher education at the University of Ceylon in 1944 before going to study at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge and Nuffield College, Oxford from 1945 to 52. There he obtained 2 BAs and MAs from the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge and a DPhil from University of Oxford. He was the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate in economics. He was also the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate from Oxford University in any subject. He was a key member of the Planning Committee for Sri Lanka's first 10-year plan, 1959, which sought to raise economic growth and reduce poverty. Among his numerous achievements was his appointment as the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, where he negotiated the terms of the Lome Convention, a landmark agreement providing development and access to European markets to Africa and the Caribbean. He was an early proponent of the equitable development who worked tirelessly for trade and development in developing countries. The Gamini Korea Foundation provides opportunities for meaningful economic engagement through rigorous multidisciplinary research to promote inclusive and sustainable development. The Gamini Korea Foundation, an autonomous non-profit institution, is committed to making a real and lasting difference in the lives of vulnerable people. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, has been conceptualized by Gamini Korea Foundation to bring about change and infuse innovation into the processes of democratic governance and sustainable economic development. It aims to pursue in-depth research and dialogue, focusing on core sectors that need to be addressed and suggest innovative, results-oriented policy strategies to resolve the current economic crisis. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum will bring together the like-minded thought leaders and industry stakeholders to discuss, debate and agree on pressing issues in a variety of sectors and devise alternative, sustainable economic models, processes and practices. A group of thought leaders who are also subject experts have been assigned to review the issues papers and provide necessary guidance and relevant research material to the respective authors. SLIF will transcend boundaries and barriers and invite specialists from all over the world to contribute their expert views and knowledge to enable Sri Lanka to face its current challenges effectively. 20 identified sectors have been assigned to experts to research and write issues papers on contemporary issues which have an impact on socio-economic development. The discourse will commence with questions that should be raised on good governance and administrative reforms. The other topics are tourism, export-oriented industrial development, macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, reforming Sri Lanka's state-oriented enterprises, Sri Lanka's electricity and petroleum industry, Sri Lankan food crops, livestock and fisheries, transportation and highways, education, healthcare, shipping and logistics, international trade and investment, subnational policies, environment, women and development, ethnicity and socio-economic development, information technology and foreign policy. The outcome of these issues papers forms a blueprint to be presented to policymakers as a landmark contribution from the Gamini Korea Foundation towards strengthening the economic recovery of Sri Lanka. You are invited to join the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum by logging on to the Gamini Korea website. Fill in the registration form, choose an area of expertise where you would like to share your knowledge, advice and comments on the issues papers posted under each thematic area. Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, beyond the barriers of tradition.
Thank you very much. I would now like to have the pleasure of inviting our Deputy Chairman of the Gamini Korea Foundation, Dr. Harsha Athuruppana, to deliver the welcome speech. Doctor.
On behalf of the Gamini Korea Foundation, let me extend a warm welcome to all the participants as well as the panelists who have kindly agreed to come and comment on the paper by one of our staff, Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe. This, as you would have seen from the presentation, is part of the research series of the Gamini Korea Foundation under what we call the Innovators Forum. The chairman of the Gamini Korea Foundation is Dr. Lloyd Fernando, who, as many of you would know, was the Director General National Planning and has also held many important positions in the Ministry of Finance and was also Sri Lanka's representative to the Asian Development Board. Dr. Lloyd Fernando actually had the privilege of working with Dr. Gamini Korea and was in the Ministry of Finance at that time. And I think some of the more senior officials here may also have worked with him in your time. And then on the Gamini Korea Foundation board, we also have several other people, including Professor Sirimevan Kolumbage, who was the Director Research of the Central Bank. And after that, senior professor at the Open University, and many other board members. So we look forward to the presentation of this paper by Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe and then a rich discussion led by our panelists. Over to you. Thank you.
That was our Deputy Chairman, Dr. Harsha Athuruppana. Thank you, sir. So without much ado, let me welcome Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe to present her paper. Thank you very much. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Azan. Chairman of Gamini Korea Foundation and the board members, and the chair of the panel and the panelists, distinguished guests, invitees, and also joining via Zoom. The broad topic of agriculture, I'll be confining my talk to food crop sector, where I got the basic experience over the last 20 to 30 years. So with this knowledge, as well as some of the work that I've done, I have written a paper on issues on food crop sector, and I think some of you may have read through. And today I would like to first introduce the sector and to give an overview of what really is happening right now, because everybody is wondering what is going on right after the crisis. And then I'm touching the root causes that we have been experiencing in food crop sector, and we'll start the discussion on what the way forward. Okay, as we all know that food crop sector is producing essential food commodities in a Sri Lankan food basket. Some are perfect import substitutes, some are near substitutes. And the performance of this sector essentially determine the food security, particularly the issue of food availability and affordability. If you take the food security, the dimensions, the availability and the affordability is a key determinant of food security in Sri Lanka, with the experience we have by doing a lot of studies. And the other hand, the rural livelihood, it's also a determinant, the performance of this sector, how much the producer share that the farmer is getting is a key determinant of their livelihood. If you look at the policies that the government have been implementing over the years, particularly since the Green Revolution, what we can see mostly, we aimed at achieving self-sufficiency in rice production. There is a rationale for that, rice being the staple food crop. And when I was at Department of Agriculture, we were discussing about this self-sufficiency in terms of 90%, 95%. When I joined Harty, the first study I did was on whether we should diversify or the paddy lands or to continue as a national made staple food. With the World Bank, we had a confrontation where to drive on. And but finally now we see the Department of Agriculture having the goal of having some near self-sufficiency in rice production. We have achieved it some years. And when the next largest crop, which we consider the maize, the animal which is a derived the animal feed, this is another revolution that took place in the recent past from 2000, late 90s to 2000. This is thanks to the liberalization policies that we were able to bring certain improved varieties from overseas, and the private sector investments, and particularly the central bank and the Department of Agriculture Ministry, they were able to bring this crop as a to the poverty-stricken areas as a second largest crop in this country. So this was the generally the policy that the government was having for the last since the from its independence time. But when you look at the crops that we produce, the competitiveness of this product that we produce in the domestic market, we have been able to compete with the international imports. The reason being our productivity, which is a topical topic that I'm discussing. We have to always have protective measures in order to safeguard our farmer. We always had import taxes. Although we entered into different trade agreements, we still have to have within the borders also some tariffs like para-tariffs in order to safeguard our farmer during the harvesting season. So there's an issue that we haven't been able to compete with the international markets. On the other hand, our markets has also been imperfect, that whatever much that the transfers that take place in this sector in terms of subsidies and other support schemes are somewhere they are stuck between the intermediaries. It's not being channeled to the producers, so the rural farmer is poor. They represent the poverty profile in this country. So there are from two ends, this sector there are issues in this sector, and what is led to the energy protein malnutrition, which is a very persistent problem that we have been discussing this for many years, a chronic issue which recently came into the forefront of this energy protein malnutrition, about this 22% this indicator, but it has been an issue for this sector to attribute to the fact that domestic food crop sector have been not competitive. Okay. Now I will give you a little bit of what has happened after this economic crisis, what it had led to, and what is the status currently. As we all know, as the government ran short of foreign exchange, they declared this ban on fertilizer and agrochemicals in April 2021. But soon after they revoked this ban, knowing that's improvement policy. But by the time the import prices had risen in the markets, so we had issues in getting fertilizer imports to the country, and at the same time, exchange rate also soared to a higher level. So we had a lot of constraints in getting imports, fertilizer import, which is an essential input in food production. So what is ultimately resulted in was the increase in prices, particularly you can see, get an example, this hearty data, raw white rice and the grain white paddy, which is used to produce white rice, and so the gap between this and the jump that it took after this crisis. So it is persistent to a certain level. 50 rupees continue to be there in this market, I mean continuously, even in the future. And when we look at the current status of the food sector, we'll take a look at. Now, you see that paddy cultivation, fortunately, we see that cultivation has not been affected. Farmers somehow or other to the drive by the department and the ministry, they continue to grow, cultivate paddy. But the fact is, the yields are very low. To the same reason that the fertilizer is not there in adequate amounts. So it's about, compared to the 2020-21, 2022, there's a 30% loss, and 22, there's a 30% again, 37 somewhere. But recent estimates by the Department of Agriculture Crop Outlook, it estimates there is some recovery from the previous Maha to the availability of fertilizers to a certain extent in the market. But there's a considerable yield loss, even though we introduce very good varieties. Situation with regard to the maize is also little similar, but it's not that good in shape, because we see the area drop, both area drop and yield drop. So that is something that should be considerable, because once the farmer abandons cultivation, it's hard to get back. And we see the cash crops. Usually we consider potato, those crops being as cash crops, farmers get an extra income. You see there is also a drop in those cultivations. And opposite of what we slightly observe, that pulses, which requires less fertilizer in terms of nitrogenous fixing plants, so they have become little significant in the economy, taking a drive towards having more cultivation. Chili is more or less the same. But we see all these crops that have been in promotion are with a huge premium. The tariff have been, by now it's special commodity levy, import tariffs, and altogether now it's called, commonly it's composite trade barrier, which is special commodity levy, is at a very high premium margin. Even the same you observe all these crops. Particularly the one is the crop that we consider turmeric. It has some huge margin to maintain this status quo. So fertilizer prices, one thing which we can little happy about is fertilizer prices are coming down in the international markets. Actually, last time it happened like 2007-8, we were able to sustain this situation. We had fiscal capacity. Now this year we didn't have. That is why we ran out of fertilizers. But the prices are coming down in the international markets. The other unfavorable factor is the weather. Yes, there are certain predictions about the drought, and also the Russian war, there are disruption in the supplies. So those are some of the factors that could foresee as the future unfavorable factors. So this is the situation right now, and let's move on to the root or the real issue of the problem of this sector. If you look at the historical episodes of uncertainties and shocks that we experience, we know soon after 1975, when the country liberalized, northern cultivation was affected. And then during the riots and the uprisings, we saw there are certain uncertainties, and the solution came to this ethnic issue is the devolution of power, which affected the extension system in the agriculture sector. It was augmented by the fact that the extension workers are also taken to the poverty elevation program. I think we discussed similar aspects in our previous discussions. So that affected actually our food crop sector. And again, the structural adjustment policies came in late 80s, and the removal of fertilizer subsidies. Soon after that also, the production of paddy dropped. And again, 1994, the new government came, they reinstated. And the monocrotophos ban and the liberalization of economy, the second wave of liberalization, that also led to completely abandoning the dry chili cultivation. And now we are paying about import bill of $100 million. And in 2015-16, what happened was this big onion seed production was affected because of these trade policies. And once this is once happened, it's very hard to get back because it involves a lot of investments. And there are instances like droughts. It's not the 2017-8. We had time to time in our history droughts that affected the food crop sector. Now, historically, we see these episodes kind of today. Maybe you can argue that it's not that serious as today, but we had similar circumstances, episodes that we encountered. But what really happened during this period was really we drifted from the global technology and institutional innovation path. The countries were going and we were tackling with the short-term issues. So this is what is observed when you look at the history of the domestic food crop sector. I happen to be doing these calculations for one of the studies we did for Gamini Korea Foundation and with the support of Agriculture Sector Modernization Project. One indicator called total factor productivity growth, which can explain how much technological institutional advance had been in a sector and can be compared among countries as well as between sectors. So this indicator tells you the costless advances in applied technology, managerial efficiencies, and industrial organizations. For example, how much technology you have acquired and how much institutional innovation, for example, the contract farming, like those kind of innovations, how that have been helpful in increasing the productivity. So those involves not a cost actually, because if it is irrigation or it's fertilizer, that involves a huge cost. You can achieve the growth at the same way, but these costless advances, how much it can contribute to a country, determines really the growth and sustainable growth of that sector. So I actually use some of the TFP calculations from literature. This is one by two scientists, two economists, and USDA, United States Department of Agriculture Economic Research Service also, they continuously carry out this exercise. They do TFP calculations, but the thing is they take agriculture in its entirety, including other tea, rubber, coconut as well. But in the ASMP study, we only concentrate on the food crop sector, and also sector-wise calculation was done. And now this is the USDA because they do from 1961 onwards. Now you see where we had some failures. Now this TFP pattern shows you during the time of 80s to 90s, we had fluctuations in TFP growth. And then some stabilization, we see some growth after that from 2000 onwards. So when you compare this with countries in the region, Vietnam, 2 per annum. TFP growth is 2 per annum. India 1.4, 175. In Thailand, Bangladesh even further better, and Sri Lanka among the lowest. I mean, when we compare these countries, so we cannot be happy about what we have our performance. So when we looked at the other statistics from Avila and Evanson, it shows the similar pattern. The numbers may be not the same, but it shows you the sign of it. We have been able to 1961 to 1980, 0.39. It has become worse after 80s. So that shows you where we to the facts that I explained you, this short-term fluctuations in the economy, how would it affect, and where we drive away from the usual technology and institutional innovation path in the rest of the world. So mostly the achievements during 80s were basically from the factor intensification. We have added more and more fertilizer, more and more irrigation. Through that only we have been able to increase the production. And then the study that we did also compare the same. I have taken also from the USDA statistics to show you the difference between after 2000, and same statistics is shown by this calculation after 2000 based by different crops. Maize, the TFP growth is the highest, as we all know. This is crop that came in during that time with a foreign technology that is hybrid, and with a contract farming, that's the institutional mechanism to transfer this technology was very effective. And this is what was calculated by this study. Now, these are some of the examples that I show you, how Vietnam ran out of this track thanks to their hybrid programs, and where we stand in terms of Chile. And as I said, from 2000 onward, we see some growth to the fact that some of the introductions, particularly new paddy varieties, now these three varieties are gaining the prominence in this paddy sector. And Chile, there was some programs, they were able to produce few varieties, but the Chile variety, the hybrid, the one and only commercial hybrid that we have produced in the country, is yet to commercialize. And the potato tissue culture seeds, G0 seeds, began in true seed production and mechanization thanks to private sector and private investment, scale economies, and improved agrochemicals and hybrid seed imports, particularly Pacific varieties maize, and also the innovation that we see in the global value chain. I'm sorry, where I am standing. No, I am going down here. Okay. Can you go back to my... yeah. Right. The contract farming. Can I have some? Okay. That is the other innovation that we see in terms of technology transfer and organizing farmers in terms of, it has contributed to the TFP growth. When we looked at from 2000 onwards, what were the contributory factors? Mechanization, you see, Sri Lanka is one of the largest, highly mechanized in this region. And land-man ratio has come, labor to land has come down drastically, particularly this is from the paddy sector actually. And TFP growth in the maize during 2005 to 10, you see 13.6%. And Chile, the new varieties introduced in 2010-15, 12. So we see some developments after 2000 and 2005 onwards. Now, when I was analyzing this, I was trying to find what were the underpinning factors that could have been for this difference. So I chosen 3 indicators: appropriate technology, institution, and policy mix required in achieving productivity and growth in the food crop sector. Because mainly it's technology that we have to adopt. In order to adopt this technology, there should be an institution. Maybe it's a private sector or corporate sector or government sector. It depends on the kind of technology. And then the required environment, that is the policy. So these mix should go in hand in order to be it's a sustainable innovation in the food crop sector. And different stakeholders in this playing different roles. We cannot leave everything to market, the government role and the international partners. And also the other factor that I've taken is the changing world order in realizing domestic efforts. This has to be given also because in terms of the foreign policy and all that, we have to think in terms of how this changing circumstance can be made use for the betterment of this sector, particularly in terms of genetic materials and other trading agreements. All this, how this would be used, will be a determinant factor, and those are the factors have been in the past been influential in making a difference not only in Sri Lanka but also in other countries. So based on Sri Lankan history, I have taken 3 areas, and this is explained in my issue paper, which I am not going to discuss further, but it's what is described in the paper. So basically, this is the picture I drew from taking everything together in an entirety, how different stakeholders playing different roles in achieving the total factor productivity growth, which is the real growth of the economy. I mean the food crop sector particularly, because it's an informal sector and there's a government sector and the private sector and the international partners who play a big role in achieving certain domestic efforts. Okay, in terms of the technology, I think one of the important area that I want to touch in this presentation is the technology, because I see, I haven't actually not included here the slide, except for paddy varieties, we have only been able to recently produce hybrid that chili hybrid variety, and we have not been able to, when you compare with Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, what they are doing, what are the level, 25% of paddy production in Vietnam is by hybrid rice varieties. So these are information that we want to be care of. What is the role of science and technology in this country? So because science and technology develop bidirectionally, if there is an advances in science that lead to technology development, technology is also will advance science, and it's a bidirectional thing. So we have to think, take into account that importance of technology. Maybe it is produced within, or maybe innovation, it is coming from outside. And it's about adaptability, upscaling, commercialization, externalities and sustainability. All this matter in terms of getting this technology right. So it tells you what is the institution, appropriate institution is needed for this technology adoption. If you look at the 3 main historical technological breakthroughs in food crop sector, is the hybridization and pure line selection, which was the beginning. Actually, we were very smart during this period. Our varieties were recognized by the world scientists. But when it comes to hybrids and the biotechnology and genetic engineering, I think we are very far behind. Biotechnology is taught in universities. Other than that, I don't know, something's happening. Fortunately, we have been able to produce at least one chili hybrid variety, which is commercially viable. Other than that, we have been very far behind what is happening in the rest of the world. So that is the same that I wanted to emphasize. I included 3 slides to show you in India, the government and the domestic private sector. In Bangladesh, the role of NGOs is playing. So there are certain institutions that is even, this is applicable to any sector, I suppose. The technology adoption and transfer that involves a different institution, which should be the appropriate one, and what is the required policy for that should be clearly understood. When I analyzed the Sri Lankan case, what I found, rather than the private sector, the role of public sector is important. Sri Lankan agriculture, the role of public sector is playing the biggest share. Now, Indian chili case, if you looked at, it's totally private sector. But when it comes to Sri Lanka, we see that the incentives for private sector for these investments, it's very little. So it's lie with the public organization. Of that also, the Department of Agriculture, the role that they play is widely, should be recognized. And it should be promoted and should be given all supports in terms of achieving these targets. But what is the real situation in Sri Lanka is, no, this is a comparison of public expenditure in agriculture research. You see from taking this index value from 2000 to compare you, because different countries, different numbers given. So this shows you Now this 2000, after 2006, this purple lines will represent Sri Lanka. It's because the salary increase. Actually, this is the reason why it has a little lie. And when you compare it with the government expedited program in other areas like research and development, fertilizer subsidy, credits and all, you see that how much been spent in order to this important area. But when you look at the Indian scenario, the ICR 2017, they say public funding for agriculture research and development in real terms has increased 6 times since early 1980s. So this is the importance that we should understand. Bringing these technological and institutional innovations requires some research work, which require these public agents to be funded. So this is one important area that I wanted to emphasize. This is something facts and information I gathered. And the other important, because now, in instance like today, and particularly it's important the role of international partners playing in this our sector. If you go back to the Green Revolution time, it was philanthropic capital. That was the main development assistance that we received. And we had also the developmental state because we support given by the government. Then the world scenario changed with the Washington Consensus. We went on to open markets and private sector capital. This very well fit into the hybrid technology, but we didn't capture it. And then, but the 2007-8 after financial crisis, the World Bank and other international partners, they looked at this sector carefully because it's mainly the poverty and food security is an important linkage with the sector. So they gave some emphasis on this sector. So I think we have to capitalize these opportunities in order to get the support from these agencies in reviving our sectors. This is actually what we discussed. I have have written some documents on this. But for this today's discussion, I thought these 3 certain areas should be of interest. Consistent policy towards food crop sector. Now we see all the time this policy without any due rationale, they change these policies. So this cost a huge, because it's one thing, it's these short-term changes, we have to adjust it, it takes a lot of time and cost. So we need informed decisions, and I find independent, accountable, sustainable bodies for decision making. It's very vital. Sectoral plans, I think we talk about also subnational and a lot of planning things, the previous discussions as well. It requires a plan. Plan is nothing but what we are going to achieve at the end. We should have consensus about whether we should be import substituting for certain crops, whether we go for what is the policy that we have on these sectors. That is something that is important because if you take Indian example, although what government coming to power, they have continuously having their plans which are rolled every year. So this is something that is we can learn from these countries to have a concrete sectoral plan for food crop sector, knowing the importance of food crop sector in terms of food security and rural livelihood. And sectoral approach to public financing. I think the instance that we experienced recently, maybe the government has some allocation for funding for fertilizers, but the other importance are coming on top of it. So how can we, in the public financing programs, how can we stand on for getting fiscal space for us? So that is very important because we know without fertilizer we cannot, without inputs we cannot run this business or cultivation. So we need this. So we have to know there is a amount of fiscal or this much of foreign exchange is needed for the next couple of years. We should know by now. So we should have plans, and that's not should be mixed up with the other public financing program. I think we can discuss on this and how to organize farmers. Because most of the farmers, large scale, they are small. When you take other countries, even in Pakistan, I have literature, they have 25 acres lands. But in Sri Lanka, it's mostly people having only 1 or 2 hectares. Organizing these farms in the 80s, I know Khati was trying a lot of efforts in farm organizations. Several ways we were trying. But I find the example of maize that provided us, the contract farming is one of the ways that we can organize farmers into one chain. So there are ways that we can think of. So how these farmers can be organized so that the technology can be transferred quickly and they are in a secured market. So these areas where I think we should give little thought more, and because we know the market imperfections, the rice market, paddy market, we all know that, the oligopsony behavior of market, where it captures most of the subsidy transfers from consumers and taxpayers get held up there. So we need to think of how that can be done, and the role that is played by the information, communication and transparency of these processes is vital. Particularly information, I know Hati and Department of Agriculture is mainly responsible for getting information from farmers and disseminate it to. But I see also, as said, discrepancies in this data information. I think we have to develop these for the good informed decisions to make. Sorry. Okay, with this I will conclude and let the question and answer session to go. I think it will fit into some of what I read in my paper, and maybe extra I brought here as well. So we can discuss further on this. I think first the panelists have their own views on my paper first.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe with her presentation. Now I would like to invite Professor Ranjit Senaratne, our session chair, chairman of the National Science Foundation, to conduct today's roundtable session. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sohan. Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe's paper dealt with how policies and other interventions like programs affected the performance of the food crop sector since the 1960s with the advent of Green Revolution. You see, this food security or food nutrition security is a complex, multifaceted, multidimensional problem for which we don't have quick fixes or cannot find overnight solutions. And we really need a transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach. I think she showed very clearly so many factors involved, so they cannot work in isolation. They need to work in concert together. Even the policy makers, you see there are so many other players involved. The farmers, the distributors, those who are doing transport, storage, value addition, and also now say in rice, this, we call this rice mafia, right? Whatever, just by producing enough food, we will not be able to have food security. There are so many other factors coming into play. You shed light on that and also on the way forward. We have 4 eminent panelists with a commendable grasp of the issues in agriculture. So now we have Mr. S. Abhinav, former Secretary to the Prime Minister, and also he has been Secretary to many ministries who need no introduction. Then Dr. Frederick Abhiratne, he is visiting all horns, right? He has been here for over 50 years now here. As has been mentioned, he's been consultant to UNIDO and also it's an agricultural economist. When you have Dr. Herat Gunutilaka, he's the CEO of Center for Poverty Analysis, and Dr. Gamini Samarasinghe, the Additional Secretary Ministry, all having a commendable grasp of this issue. So first, as for the program, I will start with Mr. Amarasekar. For the program, I think each panelist given about 5 minutes to express his views, opinion, and give feedback on the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, my experience with the agriculture is very limited. I have worked as the Secretary of the Agriculture Ministry for about 6-7 months, that's all. What I am going to say is, of course, maybe out of date now. It was about 13 years back. But what I have observed during that period, now government is trying to promote various crops. In certain times, paddy is of course right throughout there. You may decide on, maize or something like that. But the one basic issue I have seen is that land resource is limited. Arable, not only limited, it is gradually decreasing. The area of arable land is decreasing because a lot of land goes for the settlements and various industries, tourism and various environment protection and various like that. So whenever the government tries to promote one crop, I have seen it is at the cost of another crop because land area is not increasing, area under cultivation is not increasing. So what I would like to say, instead of trying to promote or do everything, because in Sri Lanka when you look at the agroecological conditions, anything can be cultivated. But I think the government should not look at everything, but government must have a program to promote several crops where you have the comparative advantages. Rather than trying to do everything, kaha and duru and everything, select some, trust areas and try to promote those to the international level to become it price comparative. I think that is very important. Maybe other crops, various things, farmers can grow, but the government should focus on selected few crops. And when you look at the agroecological condition in this country, that we say that anything can be cultivated, and also when you look at this, she also mentioned that because price-wise as well as quality-wise, our products are at a very low level compared to this region. Quality is low, prices are high, and this some kind of a structural issue. This is a structural issue because one thing, we are dealing with small holdings. That using the technology is somewhat difficult. When aggregating the various products for the market is constrained. Now what we should do is really our research. I think we must look at from land preparation to until it come to the dining table. There are several steps. We must look at each and every step and what are the constraints. So we must find some remedies for each step. Now that when it comes to the technology, I can see that I think we are a country where technology is misused very much. Because we have not found the technology appropriate for our conditions. That our small holding system, our land terrain, soil conditions, all these things are different. So we have not found appropriate tools and equipments to suitable for our holding size, terrain and the soil conditions. I think we need a lot of research on that direction. Because cost of production is very high because we are not using the modern technology or the ancient systems. We are somewhere, in between, not even in between. We are really, we have, I think, lost where we should go. We don't know where to go. That, if you look at the type of machineries we are using, say that in 1 acre whole paddy land, we are using the combine harvester, where the cost of production is extremely high. So, but because we don't, our holding sizes are, but also that, various equipment we are using are not appropriate for our soil, not appropriate for land holding size. So, there is a need to do a lot of research, practical research, adaptive research to identify appropriate tools and machineries which can be done basically by the private sector. And also our cultivation method, what I have seen, the way that farmers are doing the farming is not appropriate for modern technology. The way that they are planting, they are, even some very, very difficult. If you take a simple example, if you have to use a weeder to weed, the way that we are do planting, we can't use equipment. So that that farmer training has to be done from, in all aspects. We will have to train the farmers from planting to the, until we get the harvest. And also I would like to draw attention for one thing that normally the agriculturalists don't look at it, because in Sri Lanka, we are talking about this, establishing the cold chain. But in Sri Lanka, I think the establishing cold chain, okay, it may be all right, but it will not be an ideal solution. But instead, I would like to look into the possibility of, that Sri Lanka, we have 4 cultivation seasons, 2 dry seasons, 2 wet seasons. Then 3 climatic zones, wet zone, dry zone, and intermediate zone. And again, we have another classification, hill country, low country. Like that, we have some 11 variations in this area. So this cultivation of these crops the cultivation period can be extended by taking the advantage of this. Because, sometimes if you take, some the big onion, that dambulla you can cultivate in June, July, August, that period. But if you go to Tanamalila area, it can be done in January. Like that, we must try to do, spread the cultivation period. Because the cold chain system may not work in Sri Lanka properly, because our systems of marketing and selling, those are, very primitive. If you take some vegetable or fruits from the cold store, it has to be kept again in the cold store, but we are putting under sun and selling. So within few hours it gets spoiled. So that system will not work for us immediately. It may take so many years. And also I would suggest this research as much as possible. We must allow the private sector to do. Now we can see that CIC, that they are doing good work as a private company. They are doing a lot of research work. They have developed new varieties, and I think that we must have several companies like that. And other thing I would like to draw the attention of the whole concern is that rice. Okay, that we must ensure that it's all right. Self-sufficiency in rice is okay, but as a rice is in eating country. Of course, we must ensure that rice is available, produced locally. But our food basket, especially the cereal basket, has to be changed. Now we are trying to eat all 3 meals rice. But it is, I think it doesn't work. It can't work because rice is because production of rice is very expensive. Capital cost is extremely high compared to all other crops. The capital cost for rice production is extremely high. So, but we have other crops like maize, finger millet, that we must promote those crops as well to, not to have only one staple food, but you can have 2-3 staple foods. That for that, technology is necessary. to, that we have the maize, but we don't know how to eat. It is impossible to eat. Of course, raw maize we can boil and eat, or barbecue and eat. But once it is dried, we don't know how to eat. Then finger millet, that's another crop that we can promote. So that, this maize is cultivated, as we said, that is the next to the paddy, that it has become the second largest type of grain. But we are cultivating it only for animal feed. But no, we must do it for the human consumption as well, to supplement the rice. So unless we change the food basket, I think we will not be able to satisfy our rice requirement in the future. Because population is increasing, so we cannot increase the land area under cultivation. So therefore that we must try to diversify those things. So other thing that, this agriculture sector problems, she has highlighted a lot of problems, but some of these agriculture sector problems cannot be resolved within the agriculture sector itself. Because we need the advancement in other sectors, industries, then the service sector, because as those sectors are not expanding, burden of the increase in population and increase in unemployment has gone to the agriculture sector. The land fragmentation has become very high, not because anything, because our industrial sector and the service sector has not developed to absorb that labor. So, that cannot be done by the agriculture itself, but it has to be done by the industries and other sectors, and the science and technology will have to play a very bigger role. I think Wasanthi's paper has highlighted a lot of, issues, and also now I think she must look at what is the way forward. How should we can overcome these problems? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amarsekara, for the valuable observations and pertinent remarks made. I'm sure there will be discussions, so I will not take time. In the interest of time, I'll invite Dr. Frederick Aberatne to make his observations.
Thank you, Professor Ranjit. First, let me congratulate Dr. Wasanthi for analyzing the post-independence situation of the food crop sector in Sri Lanka, its achievements, especially in the areas of rice and maize and so on. And of course, most of the items she identified was the constraints that we have been having over the last 50 or 60 years. Some of them are still prevailing, not answered at all. Also, she analyzed the roller coaster performance of the agriculture sector. Some of the achievements, of course, as she said, rice and maize self-sufficiency and so on, and the constraints. And when you look at the specific periods, like pre-1980 or so, there was advancement in the technology, especially the Green Revolution technologies, our hydro systems, the irrigation available in the Mahavili scheme and so on and so forth. But then, since about the middle of 80s, although the economy was liberalized, there was so much of protection going on, which actually inhibited the advancement. And of course, again, she tried to show after about year 2000 or so, within the liberalized economy, there was even free trade in the technology, so to say, and the private sector involvement, and there was some growth in the sector and so on. Now, overall, what I understood was that the biggest constraint that we were facing was that the research and development was not there to increase productivity, and there was stagnation of productivity overall. So, of course, she emphasized the importance of infusing, if you like, capital expenditure into the agriculture sector for research and development. I fully subscribe to that. However, given that, at present at least, we are in a serious economic situation where one cannot expect a huge input of capital expenditure to agriculture, because there are needs in the health sector, education sector, and other sectors as well. So we have to think of a compromise situation, and I would say a long-term strategy, of course, should be like, in the education sector, they used to say there should be 6% at least for education development. Likewise, there should be a certain percentage, and you gave some percentages where other countries have been investing, where we were at the rock bottom. So that should be the long-term strategy, no question about it. Having said that, I think we have to think of some areas of mid-term and short-term strategies to supplement to get our productivity and production, if you like, the overall production going up to meet our food security needs of the country and so on. In that context, Wasanthi, I have identified kind of 4 areas. You touched here and there, so I would like to emphasize on them so that we can make something out of it to get our production and productivity up over the coming few years. The first one is on identification of constraints for upscaling. Now we can see over the last couple of decades, there were so many experiments going on with modeling and so on, where they came up with pilot projects with very high productivity and successes, but unfortunately almost none of them have been upscaled. Even right now we know with the World Bank support, there is a you mentioned about the agriculture modernization project going on, and I see in the press quite a few new models with private sector involvement for marketing and for production and for exports and so on. So I think without what shall I say, we have to think how we should be upscaling these models that have been perfected by many pilot projects through the support of the other international donors and so on. So agriculture modernization projects, these models have to be upscaled. So we have to think about that as a medium-term strategy for introducing new technologies, introducing new crops, new marketing strategies, and so on and so forth. Secondly, I would say introduction of new technologies. You were, of course, concerned about the hybrids and that kind of technology, but we hear in the press always how the other countries have been using these new technologies like the drone technologies, digital technologies, and mechanization and so on. Only the other day that, for long years in the tea sector, for example, in the African nations, they have been introducing tea plucking machines, but we have not been doing that. But I was very happy. A couple of weeks ago, I read in the papers, one of the biggest companies in the country is now introducing tea plucking. So it's a compromising, of course, between quality and quantity, obviously. But given the situation with high wages and so on and so forth, we have to think of mechanization as well as introducing these new technologies to reduce the cost of production. Precision agriculture through drone technologies, which is here and there we find, certain companies are practicing, but I think that is where the support is needed so that we can really upscale them so that almost all the farmers can use them to increase productivity and production. Now, thirdly, I was talking about the whole thing about this, you did mention, about the market margin. We know the producer and the consumer, between the producer and the consumer, the market margin is very high. Always we see the oligopolies, monopolies, and all sorts of things are happening for every crop sector. Every day we hear, now it's about the eggs, now it's about the poultry, of course about the rice, we have been hearing about this, and not only that, fish and everything, we hear about the oligopolies on the one hand, and even monopolies, they are the big people, buy and store, and consumers have to pay at a higher price and so on and so forth. So in that context, we have seen that certain companies over the years have been using, of course you did mention, contract farming and contract marketing and so on. Historically we know tobacco industry, sugar industry has been using contract farming, and of course recently for consumers, the supermarkets have been coming up to buy and so that the market margin is reduced and so on. So I think these are areas that we need to really think and upscale so that, without much of investment, that we should be able to do these things. But now one of the things that what I hear is, why is contract farming is not happening everywhere? Because of legal deficiencies. The buyers will not buy at the price that was determined, or the producers will not sell at the quality and the price that is determined and so on, because there's a lapses in the legal framework, if you like. So someone has to study what are the legal impediments, if I may say so, to see that that contract farming and contract marketing can be fully utilized, which is found in many other countries, as we know. Farmers now see, every day we hear, everybody is growing vattaka, and then you can't sell the vattaka. It's just there, every year we hear this. I don't know why people are growing vattaka for that matter. Even last week I found that, tons and tons of vattaka being produced and they just can't sell it. But if you think of planned agriculture, as Mr. Amarsekar noted, planned agriculture, where should be grown, what should be grown, and what are the consumers asking for. A demand-driven agriculture is what is needed, not a supply-driven agriculture. We are a supply-driven agriculture. So it should be demand-driven so that there is a legal frameworks so that, there can be contract farming and contract marketing can go hand in hand as a long-term strategy. Lastly, I would like to say about this whole attitude about agriculture. For us, for many, it's a traditional thing. It's the last resort. That's the last thing available, so we do that, We do know at the time of independence, almost 50% of the people in this country were farmers, and they were producing for the rest of the population. Now it has gone down to 25%, and of course, in time to come, it will be more and more less. That's how it happens in other countries as well, with diversifying of the economies and so on. But unfortunately, our diversification is very slow. People are coming out of agriculture and get to the cities and do all sorts of nefarious activities rather than getting into some livable livelihoods and so on and so forth. So therefore, we have to think about agriculture not as a last resort, but as an economic activity. As an economic activity, entrepreneurial inputs and so on. So I think that is not there at all. Of course, I'm not saying not there at all, but few do, but generally it is the last resort available. So I think, in that context, economies of scale is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. Land consolidation, with or without land rights. I would like to have land rights while we come to the city. So your land rights are there, but on a long-term lease or whatever you call it, land consolidation on the one hand. And also there's severe constraints of giving state land for large companies for larger production of and so on. We hear every day in the papers, we see there's so much of constraints. So I think legal requirements for this kind of thing has to be looked into so that without land consolidation, one cannot think of agriculture as an economic activity. Of course, in the 60s and 50s, there were studies showing that small agriculture is efficient and so on and so forth. That does not work in a global scenario where we are open to the world markets and so on. We just can't isolate ourselves and say small farming is self-sufficient, efficient. I think Theodore Schultz and people like that used to talk like that in their studies. But I don't think in a liberalized, open market, globalized situation where we know even at the world level, there is oligopolies and so on and so forth. So therefore, we have to think of economies of scale if we are to make agriculture an economic activity so that farmers will be able to have a livelihood, not as a last resort. Thank you very much. I hope, Wasanthi, I think you did mention all these things, sure. But I think we need to think of not only the long-term strategies of investing on capital agriculture, we have to do that. But the short-term ones that we have some experience that can be exploited to gain some dividends. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abhiratna, for sharing your perspectives and insight and shedding light on the way forward. I'm sure there will be active deliberations on this. Then we have Dr. Herat Gurudalaka, CEO of the Center for Poverty Analysis.
Thank you. First of all, I might echo, maybe repeat some of the things already mentioned by the two panelists before because they are important. Now, if I go back to Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe's presentation, it's very comprehensive and thank you very much. You have covered a lot of issues. But in essence, what it says is normally we look at agricultural system. If it is successful, that should provide sufficient income for farmers, provide food and raw materials at a reasonable cost. We largely fail on both counts. Many farmers are complaining about their incomes. And as Wasanthi very correctly pointed out with the data that our food inflation is much higher than our general inflation. And most of the families spend 40-60 to 60% of their income on food, not only during the current crisis period. And also, when we talk about agricultural policy, we also need to separate the crisis management from the agricultural sector management. Crisis management is very different. Certain things that we are doing this time, like, even there were projects to provide fertilizer and other things, pre-pour maize cultivation. I'm sure there may be something similar to that on the egg production and poultry meat production, because these industries were collapsed due to various distortions. First thing is to help farmers to start their work. So we go in beyond our normal policy areas to restore the agriculture sector. I think that I'm not talking about that. And now these two measures about the farmers' income and reasonable prices for food and raw material are the traditional two we try to we use in evaluating the agriculture sector, but we have added third one, that is the environmental sustainability and resilience to climate change. These are also very, very important. Sri Lanka being an island nation, our susceptibility to climate is very severe. In world rankings, we come to second, third, fourth like. So we have to also add that element. In that case, I think we still have a lot of room for at least improvement. We have done some work, but still we have to do all these things. So generally, it is very, in a way, very frustrating that we have been talking about these two issues at least for last 35 years. Now still we have to talk about that. That's why I'm going to be a little bit honest and frank when I'm making the comments. First thing regarding that, one of the problems that we have in providing agricultural extension, in having some bargaining power for farmers to sell their product at a reasonable price, scale is the problem. Because when I was an undergraduate at Peradeniya, we talked that marketing was the problem. And now we are still talking about marketing is the problem. But we have not changed at all. So my colleagues from the department are here, but if you look at department's research budget, still we spend about more than 95% on agronomy. While that marketing problem is vital for about 4 or 5 decades. So we have not changed. So that's why we need to be really, bit critical, and in a way, this is a time that we have to open our mind and see whether we did things right, and at least when are we going to change. Second thing about this scale, I think the land markets should be liberalized. When I say, I know a lot of people will get angry and this and that, and then they will ask me where the poor farmers go, this and that, but look at what countries have done. Look at China. Look at how China is right now consolidating land. That will provide the necessary scale, as well as it provide the systematic way of providing infrastructure, roads and other things, and all the landscape is converted in China to practice modern agriculture. All the findings so far say that land consolidation program in China has really revitalized the rural economy. While these things are happening, we are hanging on to some of these concepts that our poor farmers and where they do, they will find their means. If you liberalize the land, one of the problems in our country is that nobody believes in market. Although we say that we have liberalized, we have not liberalized it. We have liberalized a little bit on trade and then stop it there. If you look at all these agriculture sector is not liberal at all. Wasanthi very clearly pointed out the prevailing import tariffs. Now I did a little bit of work. I did not do a lot of work in agriculture in Sri Lanka as I was outside working for the Asian Development Bank. I did a little bit of work in the maize sector to develop a program for maize sector. Now when I look at the numbers, the CIF value of maize is like 100 rupees. Local market price according to the department is 200 rupees. When you look at the cost of production, the profit in financial terms is about 240,000 per hectare. But in economic terms, with only 2 changes, only taking the shadow wage rate factor and shadow exchange rate factor, plus the considering the border parity price, the profitability came to 30,000 from 240,000 per hectare. So these are based on the Department of Agriculture now. So we are really maintaining a system by providing incentives for farmers to have a profit, financial profit at a huge cost. Now think about this. Where does this maize go? It goes to our poultry industry. So you are buying an egg at a higher price because of this import tariff. We are taxing the consumer and happily say that, oh, we protected our agriculture, farmers are making a profit. But that we cannot sustain. That reality, when we understand that reality and face that reality. Now, for last 30, 40 years, we have been protecting agriculture. Can we do that forever? Especially under the current circumstances. Think about it. Now we are under the control of the international agencies which are promoting free trade. If IMF or someone else, IMF, World Bank, ADB, all, if they, insist us to open our market, we have to close down all our food crop production. We cannot cultivate chili, we cannot cultivate onion, we cannot cultivate maize, we cannot cultivate rice. Why don't we look at the reality? In the name of the protecting farmers, we have created this protected industry which is financially viable, temporary, but economically not viable. So how long are we going to, when we were students of economics, we were told that the infant industry should be given some protection. For how long? Look at even a bird, a small bird is fed only for 2-3 months, and then the parents chase him out of the cage. Why? Otherwise he would never survive. That's what exactly happened to our agriculture. So let us be frank about it. Otherwise, I think we will, I don't know how long we will live. My grandchildren will also talk about this import tariff and agriculture being not productive. Even the technology, and if you really look at my personal view, why we are not productive enough, it is because we are given the protection. Department of Agriculture is happy when farmers are making a financial profit. Then why should department work harder? I had this maize workshop in Anuradhapura. One of the private sector colleagues said that one farmer even doesn't, he has about 10-acre plantation. He was going to the field with the foreign manager and he stopped at one place. Farm has not done any weeding. When he inquired about that, say, given the current price and so on, I still make about 8 lakhs, 9 lakhs from my plantation, why should I weed? This general tendency that when you protect somebody, even your own child, they become less competitive. Let us understand that. And at least make our mind and respect the market. And also I also want to make another point. Apart from the holding size and this protectionism, that Wasanthi said the Department of Agriculture's role is important. I agree. But we have to really understand what is the role of the department. Should the department produce seeds and sell to farmers? Should the department do research? Here we have to really be guided by the economic principles of market failures. Department should only work in areas where market fails. The rest of the thing should be somehow given to the private sector. That is what we are not willing to do a lot of the time. That's why we are, 40 years we are talking about this. So, again, Wasanthi pointed out a very important thing in terms of maize and some other cultivation. Buyback system has worked. If you really want a good example, it is chicken, egg production. So, the big companies provide all the input, extension and everything, so that, that system lasted until the government intervened and destroyed the system by importing and this and that. So government should take the hands off from the agriculture in necessary areas if the agriculture is ever to develop. That's what I learned from my 35 years of experience. I have seen what agriculture did in Vietnam. I worked in Vietnam. I also observed in many other countries, including some of the Central Asian countries. The moment you intervene too much in agriculture, then you are creating unnecessary distortion. There are interventions necessary by the government, like research, for example. To some extent, research cannot be totally done by private. Likewise, we have to identify those areas and then concentrate on them. Otherwise, I think even if we double the allocation to the agriculture department, we may not get anything. And also because, remember that we should not also misunderstand that the public sector incentive structure is such that just increasing funding may not necessarily result good things. Unless we have some revamping of the incentive structure within the department. That is a bit difficult. That is why even for the variety development and other things, we have to rely more on private sector if possible. That another last point I want to make is that I think Mr. Amarasekara also pointed out the importance of the interdisciplinary work. So far in the agriculture sector, still we are working on isolation. If you really look at the agronomy research, there were some excellent agronomy models developed on maize legume farming system. At least there were 4 or 5, they were tested for various things, including soil improvement, yields and other things, but they never tested the profitability. While introducing soil conservation and other things, just one little step. I don't know why this is not happening. Unless you demonstrate that that farming system is financially viable, farmers will not tax it. We also further demonstrate that it is economically viable. Otherwise, country should subsidize or do something. Someone else should be paying for this. So these two are largely ignored. I'm not saying it because I'm an economist, but that is the truth in this country. So some of these things actually I just honestly pointed out. As I said, I think we should not discuss these issues again and again. At least in 10 years, 15 years time, we should make a change in the agricultural system. Some of the points I made would help. At least we have to think through these things and also convince the public as well as policymakers for that kind of changes. Otherwise, I think we will have to discuss even after 20 years the same issues. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Guruthara. Yes, we are going round the mulberry bush. It have been going on for many decades and with hardly any forward march. Now we have this Dr. Wickramasinghe. I invite you to make observations.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself as the former Additional Secretary. However, I am now working as a consultant in the Ministry for the Agriculture Sector Modernization Project. So I think that I will be able to share some of the specific cases related to Dr. Wasanthi's presentation. First of all, I would like to congratulate Wasanthi for having this paper. I think she has analyzed the situations and also given some ideas to think about. However, now as she pointed out, policy. Now, one of the key area that she highlighted was the policy. Actually, with regard to agriculture policy, it has been lagging and also discussing for a long time. So at the time I was in the ministry, it was able to release the policy, able to present to the cabinet national agriculture policy. But I think still it has not come yet. I think now it's in the final stage probably. So it will come. So they are, because it has taken quite a lot of time and a lot of discussions went on that, and I think another one was the overarching agriculture policy, which was actually prepared by funding of European Union. It also didn't came up because it covers not only the food crop sector but also all fisheries and plantation sector as well. So I think these policies should come now. It's the right time to come. And I believe at least within few months it will come and the policies will be presented to the cabinet. So now taking some specific cases now, Dr. Wasanthi said now we have to organize farmers. So I will just tell you what we are doing with the agriculture sector modernization project. So now with my experience in the Department of Agriculture and the Ministry, I identify this as a, not that because of I am working in the project, this is a unique project because it is trying to address from, it says farm to fork approach. So the project is funded by the World Bank and also supported by the European Union. So project starting from the inputs and then the value chain, address the value chain and also marketing as well. So let me take a specific case now since we were talking about the import substitution. So one of the highlighted crop was the chili. And now with this project, the variety MICH1 has been identified as a promising variety. They are, what we're trying is, in this project, yes, now with the chili, because we were talking about the technology and the varieties. So first thing is actually for the crop sector, most important thing is the variety, key varieties. If we have the varieties, we can promote those. Otherwise, with the current context, even importing good varieties also will serve the purpose. So chili now MI hybrid with the new technology introduced by the modernization project, the technology like polythene mulch, so which control weeds and also the drip irrigation, which saves quite a lot of water, and the fertilizer. It saves about 80% of the fertilizer because the 20% of the total fertilizer is used by the crop now. And the and also the other technology was the high density double row. Now earlier the number of plants were like 7,000 plants per acre, but now it has gone to like 12,000 plants. So with that technology, the yield was we see it now already in the chilies harvesting. We see the yield is like yield has increased like 4 times like this. And now you will see these now these days the prices, quite green chili prices is quite high because earlier the aim was to produce 20% of the total requirement dry chili production in the country. However, now this high escalation of this green chili prices, like sometimes it may be 150 the farm gate prices, now it is 1,000 rupees. So it's very difficult to go for the dry chili because farmers won't keep their crop, they sell it for the green chili. But I think now since there are about 12 districts are producing, and also with the perennial crops, this comes as a intercrop. So the chili the production will go on, and there I think we will have a chance to go for dry chili production. But the thing is, as we said, now if you import it from India, so we can sell it to a lesser price. But as pointed out, the cost of production is again quite high. Therefore, we need some kind of policy if you want to promote the dry chili production within the country. Because we see the chili produced in Sri Lanka, actually the quality is, we can assure the quality is good because we use IPM and IPNS technology so that we can assure the quality. So I think you have heard about the chili import from India. They use a lot of pesticides and all the qualities, even the disease, the aflatoxins are there also. So for that, I think we should have a strong decisions, especially policy decisions. We have actually informed the ministry as think about that, and at least when the production goes up, so take a decision on policy so that we can promote, and we are providing even the dryers for the farmers. Some farmers are very happy because they have earned quite a lot of money from the even selling the green chili. And not only that, actually now this is for the import substitution, but you know this our farmers. So I think some farmers say don't call us as farmers, say entrepreneurs. Now, you know, as we said, now if you want to go for the world market, now because Sri Lanka has quite good potential for products like mango, passion fruit, and also now pineapple. So for that, actually, we should have a good technology for to maintain the quality standard. So another example is, I think you might have seen in the TV, the Ambul banana it's a naturally grown variety. Now it is now imported to Dubai market. It has initiated. So likewise, there are a lot of innovative things has been trying by the modernization project. So now other examples are pomegranate. Now the red pomegranate now we are importing, but now we have plantations in eastern provinces and also northern provinces. So that kind of I think approaches we need, and so that these are going as a agriculture technology demonstration parks. But those who like once they see the progress of that, the farmers can take them and upscale. The other thing I want to stress actually Dr. Wasanthi's presentation. I think if you can highlight some of the post-harvest losses also, because we need some innovative technologies to prevent the post-harvest losses. Still we see there are 30 to 40% losses. But you see, if you take the supermarket chains, their loss is like 5%. So the possibility is there. So that and the technology, I think we have the post-harvest Institute of Management, and also Department of Agriculture also has the research sector, food research center. But you know the technology is not much used. Now, good example, if you want to buy a mango from a vendor, if you buy 5 mangoes, you see only 1 or 2 is good. Others are ripening in artificial way, very bad way. So that I think we need to introduce that technology. So extension, the agriculture extension should be strengthened. So then you are talking about the digitalization. So now, since world is going quickly now, India and other countries, they are going for digitalization. So in agriculture, I think the agriculture extension and also marketing can be well supported with the digitalization. Now another thing that discussed was the funds for the research. Now as we see now, the government is finding it very difficult to fund the public research, but however, you know, there are a lot of grants are coming, grants and even the loans. So I think if we can make use of them, especially now the climate funds, I think for the environment ministry, there are quite a lot of funds. There are a lot of opportunities there for even agriculture, because we are talking about the climate smart agriculture. So I think there's some kind of overall approach to utilize these funds very well, so that the government, the same projects, because we can identify the priorities. For the priorities, if we can make use of those funds, I think that will be very useful, so that government funds can be reduced, the research, and also the research budget can be increased. So with that comments, thank you very much. I will wind up.
Thanks, Dr. Samarasinghe, his observations. You see now 4 eminent panelists express their views, opinions, and share their thoughts. You see a lot of common threads running through what they said, like policy, R&D, and so on. So during my submission, I also like to make some broad observation. First, thank you for your very comprehensive presentation, Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe. Now, just to highlight the situation in our country, Now, our panelists talk about productivity. Now, Netherlands, 60% of our land area, with about 5 months cold climate, world's second largest exporter, and they are agricultural produce, food commodities, coming to about 115 to 120 billion, much greater than our GDP, the agriculture alone. Next to America, that is there, Netherlands. So very high productivity, and also they are tech savvy, high-tech agriculture they use, intensive agriculture. If you take, now here Mr. Sarabjisandaya was former ambassador to Israel. Israel, now in our country, if we say less than 1,750 millimeters, less than, rainfall less than 1,750, we call dry zone. In Israel, with 400 to 500 millimeters, they do agriculture. And world highest milk yield is in Israel, about 40. Highest is about 40 liters per cow per day. Ours, they say 4, sometimes even less than 4. You see how the technology, I think many mentioned about we are doing agriculture as usual. And as Dr. Gurutra said, when I was also student 50 years ago, we talk about 30 to 40% loss post harvest. Now also we are still talking about this same thing. But if we look at this policy, I think our policy has been lack of policy. In the sense, very incoherent, inconsistent and irrational policy throughout. That has been the main problem. That is the foundation for development. Without, now you see, with regard to use of land, what is the land policy? Very old one there, land fragmentation there. And countries like, say, Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, Iran, even Japan, they also had similar problem of fragmentation. Now our 80% coming from smallholders. So that is a very serious problem there. And they did consolidation, and also some entrepreneurial farmers were asked to really cultivate lands which actually belong to farmers who were not really committed, but they had land, but they are not really committed to agriculture. So they had really identified promising, enterprising farmers, and they really did land consolidation and also buying land from farmers who are marginally interested and giving to farmers. So this type of clear land policy is nothing new. So we can really introduce a land policy. Say our agriculture. Now if you say, I think I was mentioning this also to Mr. Vijay Singh. Now if we want to really do anything, as also mentioned by his evidence-based, data-driven. You say our agriculture, it doesn't apply to agriculture. If you want to even have a matrimony, you check compatibility of partners. If you want to put up a building, say multi-storied, you check soil properties and lay foundation accordingly. For agriculture, any crop, anywhere. Now you see people, if this cinnamon more lucrative, you uproot rubber and plant. You don't check suitability. So now if you look at this classic example, rice. What is the average yield of rice? Grown over 22 districts. And 2 million farmers. Do we need that much farmers? That many farmers? And yield varies from 3 metric tons to 7.5 to 8. Right? But all use the same level of water, 5 acre feet water, same amount of fertilizer, same amount of pesticide, same amount of labor, energy, everything. Why don't we have this land capability done? People can have their backyard farming, that is as a home garden, there is no issue. But for commercial production, they should really classify our land, identify lands agroclimatically and edaphically more suitable, lands agroclimatically and edaphically more suitable matchmaking. Now we don't do no matchmaking here.
except for marriages, agriculture, matchmaking, no. That is not there. That is why we operate under suboptimal conditions, so you can't expect high yields. Now say, this Dr. Wasanthi showed, Sri Lanka, what is it now, 4.5, now stagnant. Now India 6-7, China also 8, Australia 10, right? Now our problem is now we could vanquish the most ruthless terrorist outfit in the world. We have defeated England, I think, in cricket 20 times. But we can't do our agriculture. Not that inherent something wrong with our nation, but policy. We cannot just blame only the politician, we are also responsible. So I think that is the one what I want to really regard in this policy. Now water use efficiency, now water. In future, now already water conflict is actually becoming really is a growing issue across the globe. Already 50 countries having this water conflict. And water conflict can be weaponized there. And even in our country, you know, is Mavilaru, that is the one that triggered the war, right? Water. So now also people talk about hydropolitical issues. So when we use average, but 4.5, we use about 2,000 liters to produce 1 kilogram of rice. Can we, this is sustainable. It is eco-friendly. Shouldn't we change? Not because paddy win, but to suppress weeds. Now water, now if we have now water in time to come, we cannot use for 80% for agriculture. So we should have clear land policy, water policy and labor policy. Now you see labor 2 million. Now for instance Malaysia, I am just talking about general issues, I think this is relevant to this subject. Now we are our 25% of labor force contributing about 87% or to 8% of 7% GDP. In Malaysia, they are only about 11% of their workforce. Comparable conditions, climate, soil, is more comparable. They are only this 11% contributing 8%, less than half. So we can jettison this excess baggage, not just to throw them to the street. There are, because we have the subsidies, guaranteed price, free water, everything. So I think they feel little comfortable because, I mean, you get something at the end of the day because of our system. So I think we should change that, but we cannot just throw them to the street, but we should have again, that's why I think many underline agriculture policy means it's not agriculture. It is several sectors cross-cutting, right? It is trade, environment, water, energy, labor. Now labor migration policy. There should be a labor migration policy so that to migrate after retooling and reskilling. So this type of intervention necessary if we want to make agriculture competitive. Otherwise we can, if we can defeat, no, but World Cup, no, defeated all the top-notch countries in the world, World Cup. But agriculture, we are at the rock bottom. So I think this there, and also I want to show about this, mention about this extension service. I not to criticize, but to characterize. You know, our extension service, it is, we also responsible for all this, partly. It is inadequate, unsatisfactory, and also anachronistic, outdated. Now you see, for instance, in our country, for pesticides, do farmers go to extension officer to consult what pesticide to use? They go to this pesticide dealer. It shows now the state of our extension service. So he over-prescribes, but this the problems in agriculture with also health. Agriculture, nutrition and health all interrelated. So what we consume, I think we don't consider about this minimum residual level. We want to export, we want agriculture to be export oriented, but we don't have even basic quality, national quality infrastructure in place. So now this Dr. Wasanthi shed light on several issues, but as I said, this is a wicked problem, so to say, multifaceted, multidimensional, complex issue So all key players need to work together. Even agriculture policy is not only agriculture. It cuts across several sectors. All have to work. That's why now we talk about interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approach, without which we will not be able to find solution, lasting, sustainable solution. Some quick fixes here and there, okay, and R&D, I think it is understood. 0.1%, no? Even now, Pakistan 0.3, India 0.8, Korea 4, and Israel 4.3. There's positive relationship, no? Percentage R&D of GDP and GDP growth. So we don't do this, because even to look at our country, you see how many people are from the science background. Very few. So science and technology not receiving any attention, only lip service. You see, I'm just take a minute or two before opening our discussion. Now when Biden, when he was elected president, what he did? First thing, he actually nominated Eric Lander as his scientific advisor. And then he gave him 5 questions. And he wanted him to answer not his personal view, consult stakeholders and submit a report. So that is the priority given to science and technology, right? So without this type of approach from top down, ours talking here, very difficult to bring about this change. So we have to have science advice. No? Now all have science advisors. No? This top-notch advisors. So I think this is necessary. Otherwise, now our discussing here, as many have been saying, very difficult to really, we may move little ahead. But compared to what other countries doing, if we don't have this, I think we all know what we should do. But we have to get together and meld ourselves to formidable force and make our voice heard. Then only, in my opinion, we could really bring about change, so-called this system change. Now, by changing people, only 15% will change. Even whatever changes you make with people, 85% depend on the system. So, if you don't address that system change, whatever we do, we will not have that. So, I think we all are talking about system change. So, these are some very general observations I made. Now, with this, I think they had a lot of valuable observations, especially in relation to the presentation made. Since they really touch upon all key points, I made some general observation, some broad brush treatment to this topic, but I thought it's relevant. Now we really open the forum for discussion. Thank you. Oh, yes, this one is here. Would you please identify yourself before me? Please, we know you, but please identify yourself.
So, you want me to do what?
Identify yourself, please.
Yeah.
Well, he is very well known.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. First of all, I must thank Wasanthi for opening our eyes. Not only the eyes, several vibrant mouths are also open with your paper. You would have witnessed that. Now, we are talking of innovation and challenges in the agriculture sector. If you travel your eyes around this table, you will see there are many young girls and boys seated among us, these old people. And we are talking about the innovation and challenges and the land consolidation with 2 key acts. One is the Paddy Land Act, other one is the Land Reform Act. Both were introduced much earlier than these young girls and boys were born. So that is something we all must take into consideration. Then the second thing is the share of agriculture, Colombo might challenge me, has come down from more than 40% to 7% of the GDP. And Colombo would say, Chandra, is the normal system when the country is developing. It it happens. But Sri Lanka is back to base. We are now back as a bankrupt, low-income country. So I do not know whether we can still claim as a result of the development, the share of agriculture has come down. So that is something we have to bear in mind. And the third one is this research. Now this very session is held in the Agrarian Research Institute, and the session is chaired by a prominent, eminent professor of agriculture, Ranjit Sen Ratna, and he is also the chairman of National Science Foundation. And if you walk around 1 kilometer radius, within one radius of 1 kilometer, you will come across so many research bodies, the universities. Every university has a faculty of agriculture. But we are talking of research. My experience or my understanding is it is not a question of lack of allocation or lack of research. Research is there, but whether how much they are relevant to the field, that is one thing. The second thing is this research is remaining in the shelf. It doesn't go to the field. There is no access for the farmer. Even the Aragale time farmers have come to these places, but now they have lost that access. They cannot come. So we have to strengthen the extension system. I can remember some time back when I discussed about this dissemination of the research finding, agriculture department, main department, Peradeniya said, our job is doing the research. Extension is with the provincial agriculture. They studied together in the same faculty of agriculture. They worked together in the same department. They were recruited together, but they cannot talk to each other to take this message down to the farm. So that is another thing. Then other one is that value chain. Agriculture value chain is so fragmented. They are all links are in pieces, in several places. Some set is in the agriculture department, others set in the universities, others are with policymakers, but there is no value chain. The last but not least is that today world's number one topic is climate change. But we are still talking of Yalamaha introduced the granary in the east during King Parakramabahu's time. And we have not changed it. We still talk of Yalamaha. We have not tuned ourselves into this climate change, which is the number one hot topic. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Malyad, for this observation. Yes, we have this Land Act and many old acts still in place and no action taken to really change them and introduce new act. Especially this R&D in our countries, especially now universities have been mainly doing research for their promotions. We know that, right? Only of late, now they are actually shifting the emphasis to make them more relevant to real world issues. So in the past, actually, because we have R&D, of this total R&D person, about 65 to 70% from universities. Right? In the past, they were mainly focusing on academic research only for publication in high-impact journals. Now there's a shift. But of course, R&D done by R&D institution is there. With regard to this fragmentation, this is true. Now you see this shipwreck, pearl shipwreck. A lot of sea animals, including whales, drifted ashore. And NARA, the research institute on this, they could not touch. That belongs to wildlife, right? So these animals, they don't have any laboratory facilities. So these animals are perishing on the shore. So even to see what chemicals, how they died, the post-mortem they could not do because the animals belong to wildlife. So we have no linkages, anything, arrangement. So that is the fragmentation and compartmentalization we have in our system. We have even within institution we find that. But I think we have to change this and to make the institutional boundaries more porous and permeable so that they have some mechanism to work across ministerial boundaries. Otherwise, if we don't really ensure that, otherwise they say, no, this is you have to come through this one, this secretary, the long winding circuitous route. So I think for policy interventions, so this type of mechanism should be introduced so that we minimize this fragmentation and ensure free flow of ideas, resources across boundaries, so there will be a lot of synergy and complementary. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Light. Yes.
I'm not going to take too much of your time. Some very valuable presentations were made, and I have only one important point to make. First of all, starting with what Wasanthi said, it is still in my head, total factor productivity. And we are below Bangladesh. Think about it. Then Dr. Ranjit Senaratne made a very important point, which we cannot ignore. You see, we try to do things in isolation. That won't work. Even before going into details, let me ask you, now there is a problem at the moment for water. You see, we need water for hydroelectricity. On the other hand, water for cultivation. There is a conflict. How do you resolve that? You can resolve it only through a holistic approach to the problem. And that's why I say, you see, we go nowhere in agriculture without a proper planning system. You see, I had the privilege of going for my appointment as Director General of National Planning 41 years ago. You see, I am of course quite old now. At that time, we had the meeting in Kandy. It was chaired by Mr. Bradman Virokon with a message from Mr. Ronnie Dimel, and all the top-notch people attended the meeting. And so, listening to them, you see, I found that we had some of the best people with technical knowledge, scientific knowledge in the country, and also planners. And the end result of that was, within 6 or 7 months, we came up with what is called the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Strategy. This must be there in the library here. What have we done? That is a problem. You see, we keep on changing these plans. You see, every time, particularly in agriculture, because agriculture is where you reach out to the politicians, reach out to the farmers and to the villagers. And we have been messing up. So unless you put that thing right, because as I can see, we have some of the top scientists in this country, agriculture scientists, top planners. You see, a lot of people like that. You know this, Dr. Ranjit Senaratne, because you are in charge of the Science Foundation and you meet a lot of scientists. You know that we have some of the best in the world. But are they being put to use? No. We are trying to, and as you said, don't try to do these things piecemeal, in isolation. And this has been said over and over again. You see, well, I don't want to talk about myself, but I got frustrated during that period, and I exchanged some notes with Mr. Ronnie Dimel, and I said, unless we get the administrative system right, we go nowhere. So he told me, Lloyd, speak to your friends in the World Bank. Ask them to send a team to study the planning system in this country and for administrative system. So I spoke to, at that time, David Hopper. You know, David Hopper, I've been telling this story to you. He's from the World Bank. You know, and David Hopper, and he put his arm around me after a head group meeting and said, Lloyd, we don't have the kind of people whom you want. Speak to UNDP or some other organization. And then, but he felt that it was a very important point that I made about administrative service. He sent a person called Jeff Lamb, you see, who was at the IDS Sussex, Institute of Developer Studies, the Sussex. You must have heard about him. And he came and we had a chat, and then without asking me lots of questions, he just sat in front of me, started taking down notes. I said, hey Jeff, what are you doing? I said, wait. And he finished it. And when the, what do you call the country economic memorandum? Country economic memorandum is what we used to get from the World Bank at that time. When it came, whole chapter on administrative reforms. And what did we do? We got Shelton Manasinghe down from ESCAP, and he came and wrote the 10 volumes on administrative reforms. And he said, do not try to implement any of these recommendations piecemeal. It is not only counterproductive, but dangerous. Well, that is exactly what we have been doing. Exactly. And we don't have a system of planning in this country. We go nowhere. You see? So, with all, after listening to you, I feel, is there any new knowledge that is really required? We have the best of scientists, agriculture scientists in particular. You see? But we can't put this to use because of this piecemeal approach. And there is a political problem. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. We would like, I think, learned members, now Dr. Harshvardhan there, Professor Kolomgi there, also panelists there. You would like to respond to what you said? We need the holistic systems approach. Without this holistic system approach, these ad hoc interventions will do more harm than good. Okay, Doctor.
Oh, I was going to say, Professor Senaratne, it would be good to hear from the young people who were born after the 2 acts that Mr. Malyadda mentioned, some ideas from them also. What do they think? So yes, I think it would be great if some of the younger people here also were to come in. And of course that doesn't stop others, please, others come in as well. But those who were born at least after one of the 2 acts.
I am Kumudini Mudalige, representing Sri Lanka Export Development Board. So I just want to make some comments related to exports actually. When it comes to the agriculture exports, I think most of these panelists have very, very good insights actually, very good points that we need to actually implement in future. So when it comes to exports actually, our exports contribution, agriculture contribution to exports is very less. I think it is less than 15% for a long time. It is not changing. That contribution also coming from tea and coconut and some rubber products. These are our traditional exports. But actually, even when it comes to the export development also, widely speaking, the agriculture exports, we need to improve agriculture exports. And there are a lot of, the conversations are going on. But practically, actually, our country, as Mr. Amarasekara mentioned, that we have limited lands. So we have limited lands and we have to be carefully plan how we can use that. But actually currently it is not happening as many of these panelists mentioned. So we go for all crops and we are going to culture turmeric, ginger, everything, sometimes for exports. But that is not actually possible. So as example, I think sometimes ago that we have took a decision that we stop importing turmeric and we were asked to cultivate it. But actually without any research or any survey that is started. But when it comes to turmeric is very cheaper in other countries. We had lot of export processing companies that use turmeric and do some value additions. But because of this ad hoc decision, actually most of these companies has to relocate to other countries because at that time suddenly turmeric was not available and people cannot culture that also. Even the culture in varieties also not suitable, the production that they were taking place. So this kind of decisions are taken. Now actually turmeric is widely available, now cannot do anything. Even the farmers were in the very difficult situation because they have spent their time, money and everything, but they cannot recover. So this kind of actually decisions, I mean, as all the panelists mentioned, we do not have a policy that has been based on our research or surveys or whatever things. That is the basic thing. When it comes to export, actually we have some unique products, like as mentioned, some pineapples and GI certified cinnamon that is available only in Sri Lanka. So we can actually promote that kind of selected products from Sri Lanka. The other thing is we do not have commercial agriculture, so we cannot compare Vietnam agriculture or Malaysian agriculture, because they do commercial agriculture. Then the cost is totally different from ours, because they will use widely, I mean, high technical equipments for this, but we cannot. Even when it comes to, we see that we have that cinnamon have very good opportunity, but still we cannot get the maximum out of it. We do not have commercial cultivation of that. If we have commercial cultivation only, we can use sophisticated equipments to extract some oils and some leaf oils like that. But we cannot establish these things in Sri Lanka because the production is very limited. Even though we were talking that we have to modernize this, it is not possible without, the good production. So that is what I want to emphasize. So we cannot go for a commercial agriculture. It should be a selected areas, some selected areas, not the everyone, because we have limited land. That is one thing to emphasize. The other one is, if we select some areas that we can cultivate, if we don't have actually technology, we should invest that. That is how Vietnam and other countries has gone up. They have actually investment with technology. That is how they have improved and technology and some agreements with other countries. Not only the agriculture, when it comes to the exports, Vietnam is in the top place. China is in top place, because all these are, most of these countries are having investment with technology. So if we select some areas to develop in agriculture, at least if we don't have this technology, we should allow investments to come to the country with technology. So at least it will remain in the country, that technology we that introduce. So these kind of, I think, planning is required when we need to develop agriculture. The other one is, if we think that, as we mentioned, if the rice, we are self-sufficient with rice, it doesn't mean that food security is secure. So if we have, if we are good enough with the financial, access to the finance to everyone, so food security will be ensured. So that is what I want to mention. That we need to see as a whole this, not the agriculture sector, as many of mentioned. Actually, if we can develop the industrial sector and allow some imports to the country for the agriculture, because we need the access to food also. So we need to, as the World Bank already advised us, that we have to open the trade. So people should have access to eat some foods, where we don't have here. All the other countries, most of the foods are available for people, but we don't have. Actually, in the less price, the food should be available. Then the food security will be ensured. If they have money, so we have to make sure the people to be, become entrepreneurs, not only agriculture. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Sarathi.
Yeah, Professor.
President Council.
Yeah. I feel very small in the midst of these giant economists and professors. I am a puny lawyer. I have been in Israel as the ambassador, and I was fascinated with their technology. Therefore, I tried to be a student of agriculture. And then I studied agriculture on my own, and then I took steps to bring Israel technology here to Sri Lanka, because agriculture in Israel, 95% of agriculture is technology. So as a result, when I was ambassador, I proposed, and the group is coming here to set up a center of excellence in Sri Lanka to exchange and for agricultural technology. As a result, we published a book. Of course, the main article is from Professor Ranjit, and there are 31 articles here on agriculture, out of which 20 are by me and by my assistant who is behind. As lawyers, we somehow managed it, and I offer this to you free. If you give my assistant your WhatsApp, it will be sent to you by mail, by WhatsApp, a soft copy. Now, lastly, I was questioned by Mr. Pereira, the leading agriculturalist, the richest man in Sri Lanka, and then he has heard of the book, and then he said, Mr. Vijayasinghe, I am a man of few words. If you want to work with me, give me your things in 10 minutes, 10 points. I said, give me 10 minutes, I'll give you 10 points. These are the points that I gave. These points I gave to Mr. Pereira. Agriculture has been our livelihood, embodied with our culture, which we have to depend on to improve for a prosperous and a bright future in our nation. That's the first point I gave him. Then our salvation would be agriculture, and we must modernize the commitments and strategy with our traditional experiences and knowledge in the past thousands of years, with a new vision and a strategy with professional farmers and entrepreneurs in private sector, as politicians have failed us over 74 years, mainly with the private sector. The third point, farmers must be educated and organized professionally as the West when you say West in the USA, Europe, and Canada, they are richest are the farmers, led by entrepreneurs, professionals, those patriotic Sri Lankans abroad aiming at the agriculture technology and innovations, as 95% of agriculture in Israel is technology and innovations based on the experience in converting a desert to an agricultural hub in the Middle East. It was a desert with no water, not a drop of water. Then they started desalination from seawater, you see. And then as Professor said, they are the main exporter to Europe is Israel. Point 5. I gave this in 10 minutes. We must have a proper and correct agricultural policy. Of course, we haven't got. I'm happy you are here, Mr. Wasanthi. Please inform the minister, who is my friend, who is my hometown. He's very not approachable now. It's difficult when they are in power. But I hope you will give him a copy of my book, soft copy of my book. And I know him so well. We must have a proper and correct agriculture policy to suit the nation with comparative with non-political professionals, groups like you all. You are doing a wonderful job. That suits our climate and the resources which are in abundance, which is to be exploited. All that is in this book, 31 chapters. Sixth point, education, inspiration, training and technical are the vital factors to be considered. The proposed Center of Excellence they're coming here for the Center of Excellence. We might get I need your help from the government to get a land from somewhere in a remote area. You see, in Anuradhapura somewhere, few lands. And having got the idea, India has set up 22 centers. Because when Modi was the agricultural minister, he visited Israel, and then there are 22 centers. They have discipline and education, inspiration, training, and technical are vital factors to be considered. The proposed Center of Excellence and the delegation from Israel next month would be a starting point, coupled with the activism of Ambassadors Forum, that is a forum that I'm chairing, from producing and publishing a book on agriculture today I think in which Professor was the main speaker. We gave him an award of lifetime excellence to him, and three other professors were given. We recognized them at the Ambassadors Forum. He and Professor Marabe, him and Gagamini. Discipline and law and order to be strictly enforced and adhered to eradicate corruption, inefficiency, political influence, bribery, corruption, which is the main cause to spread as cancer. Mr. Samarathi, go and tell your minister, please. This is to all the politicians. Point 8. Special attention would be taken to environment destruction of forest and the resources by rich and politicos, and it is a duty to our public organize themselves. It's again politicians are also involved. Point 9. Education, training, guidance from young school days, and not realized the value of agriculture to be given special. Value of education in Israel, every man is an entrepreneur. Every man is an agriculturalist. Agriculturalist. You know, they don't water the sand, the soil. They water the root. You see, drip irrigation. We have written an article here as well. And last, vigorous, powerful and genuine program to be instituted and put into practice to implement the above proposals on government ministers, officers, and like to rise from sleep. They are asleep. You see, I repeat again. Above proposals of government ministers, officers, and the like to rise from sleep, and professionals to lead the campaign with private sector. These are the 10 points I gave him in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I just quickly respond to observations made by this scientist from EDB? Yes, we are having the problem of market concentration and product concentration. Our markets only going to few countries like USA, EU, and so on. In the product also, we are having this apparel, tea, and few other products. So we need to diversify. Even now, things like polos. This global market is about half that of GDP, about $40 billion. So we need fruits of jack perishing on and under the tree. So a lot of prospect. Even now, like herbal technology, now we have biodiversity. Now like immunity boosters, nutraceutical, cosmeceuticals, now eating for beauty, nutri-cosmetics. They are becoming very, very popular and huge industry. Sri Lanka has it's a unique position. So I think your point is well taken that product and market diversification is needed and very, very important. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. I am Hemali Kottalavala, Director General, Department of Animal Production and Health. First, I would like to thank Dr. Wasanthi for giving very nice presentation. Yes, as you said, maize was a good the success story of with contract farming as the poultry farming in Sri Lanka, especially the chicken industry. But I think the second decade, from 2010 to 2020, the factor productivity was not like that. It has come down. So you can search what was the reason for the decreasing the factor productivity of the next decade. Actually, 80%, 90% of the cost of chicken, egg or milk is feed cost. So that comes mainly from maize for chicken industry and egg industry. And also now, since the commercial dairy sector is growing, silage, the maize silage is being used by the dairy farmers. So maize will be a very essential crop for Sri Lanka for the next decade. For that one, I think we may need 600,000, 700,000 maize production in the country. But we don't have such kind of production now. So for that one, as you said very correctly, the technology and contract farming and policy has to be there to increase the productivity. So we hope we will be able to get such kind of production. The maize should be developed as an industry actually, because to feed cattle, not only cattle, feed the chicken and the layer industry, because they are trying to export their products. chicken meat and eggs to other countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for giving this opportunity. My name is Saman Devage, representing the private sector. Actually, I'm a member of Export Association, Fruit and Vegetable Export Association. So, actually, what I want to highlight that the main thing, the former Israel ambassador was highlighted. So, I don't want to repeat it again. But thing I want to highlight that as everybody highlighted here, the agriculture policy is the most poorest thing is the agriculture policy, and it's always shaking depending on the minister. So we have to develop a better agriculture policy. Even though we develop agriculture policy, I saw a lot of areas. The most of the policy come from these the people who are involved in the development of policies is basically academic, research, and the administrative people only. But in the agriculture, mainly the agriculture policy must be developed with the assistance of the producers. I think I have never seen that the agriculture producers are involved in the development of the agri policies or in any decision-making point. So that is mostly I want to highlight that. Even if you are proposing to the government to develop a good policy, please at least advise them to get some involvement from the producer groups and the exporter groups. That will be a great the support to develop the agriculture sector in Sri Lanka. I am a grower basically from last 20 years. The agriculture is not a losing business. It's not the business having a loss. Because last 20 years I am running my business in the profitable. It's all agriculture cultivation side. But the problem is here is the continuous supply of the inputs. You know that basically the agrochemicals, fertilizer, water and all the kind of inputs, and the other thing is the labor. The most problem is the labor now. You know, the labor means the skilled labor. Even though we got a new agriculture graduate for a production, he does know what is agriculture. That is the problem. So we have to develop a good skill labor for the agriculture development. That's what have to be highlighted here. Okay, the other thing is everything as the chairman here is highlighted, these what you call the organizing. We have to think about the holistic. He always was highlighted the holistic. Yes, of course, our organizing. I don't know whether it's the organizing capacity or skill is very poor in all areas of the country. If I take example here, in this meeting organization there are some drawbacks here. You know that you know that now we all are in 3 years now here. So at least you have to provide some bottle of water for everybody, not some selected people. That is kind of discrimination. Okay, that is kind of discrimination. So that we have to learn those type of small things when you're organizing or even a seminar, not like a national level things. But so I want to highlight those things. So basically, I agree with all your suggestions and these discussions here what we have done, but we have to implement those things. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I think your observations are very valid. Because citizen engagement, we do everything from our officers, really the real stakeholders not consulted. That is one reason we have these policy failures. When you come to implement, not implementable, because the key stakeholders not engaged in formality policy. I think that is a very important point. I think the message is very clear and loud. I think I think this time is now up. I think we need to now, I think you are now challenging task. Dr. Wasanthi, you see a lot of ideas expressed, some maybe merit serious attention. We would like to listen to you and your feedback on the observations and comments made. Floor is yours, Dr. Wasanthi.
Thank you very much. I think I got a lot of one way I got some contradictory briefs that I had in mind. Some of them were cleared a little bit, and some which I added some points that you raised, and also some clearance I have to make, especially with regard to certain points that you raised. I think land consolidation, it's one of the very debatable area that we all discuss. I think this ARTI, this venue would have been a place for this for many years. ARTI did a lot of work on this. As when I was at Hati, we did a lot of work on land consolidation, where we should drive in, and water issue we all discuss at length, because we had a division here at Hati, water and water planning division, water resource division, and land policy division. We talk a lot about these issues here. In this, what probably would have been the same place. Now, the land right issue, that one way we can approach, as the panelists discussed, right away, straight away, opening the land will be a big challenge. But in the China also, first it happened, the management was transferred. It was a stage-by-stage approach. So I think this land issue, first we have to try out with the land conservation method with equity relations, maybe land rights with the owner, and then it can be share, would be like in a corporate. It's a equity. How that can be developed to a cooperative system. In South Korean example is a good, we can learn lessons from. These are not actually be discussed at length for many decades for now here. And with regard to the water policy, it's the same, because every time I know what the division here, all the time intervene when there is an issue with regard to the water, because electricity and other, there are 4, I think, agencies working together when the water is issued to the farmers. So these are issues that we discuss for many years now. Water tax came because we calculated the value for water one time, and this was challenged. And I think we need this kind of discussions, interdisciplinary discussions, in order to arrive. I think the good example I found, the chili production. Now we have found a new variety, chili hybrid. Now it is about upscaling this technology, like the maize revolution that we did. Now the next we have the chili. I think, but as Dr. Herat mentioned, the profitability. We have a question whether this technology is cost effective. So that is where we have to find answers. So in terms of the policy we discussed, I'm not much clear about this policy and development planning, because policy is something that is the how we proceed with. But we should have a plan, development plan, which is we set targets. But the system runs within a certain system, that is the policy. Now, for example, open economic policies we adopt. But the development planning itself is where we are reaching the vision, mission, in particularly the corporate plans. We write vision and mission, where we drive to. So that should be very clear. Now, for example, we'll take the Chile example. Now, whether are we going to 25% self-sufficiency in Chile? Is it our next target? Then on what conditions we are working? Now, if it is not profitable, we have to, but our technology, what we develop, because when you looked at India and particularly Bangladesh, most crops are not native to them. They were introduced during certain times, but they have worked towards it. So we have to have a plan. I think that I have to endorse the same way that I've highlighted in the presentation. We have to have a plan. Plan is something like that, where we are driving to. And the conditions under which we work is a policy. That is why I understood because I have tried to understand these two words very specifically. What is the real meaning of it? And then with regard to the research, and the universities are lying one side and the research institute are, that is a good way that we can adopt the Indian system and the US system. The land grant system is very good example, I find. Now, for example, Battalaguda Research Station is there and the Vayama University is just beside. But they are doing food and nutrition. Battalaguda Research Institute, they can do rice research. I mean, they can collaboratively work with. That land grant system is very good model that we can practice. I think those are some points I want to highlight. And I think Professor Ananda, you may add some points to, if you want. I think personally, I felt like he's adding some points to the technology parameter.
Thank you very much, and so sorry I missed your presentation from the beginning, and I had to join a bit later. Of course, having listened to all of you, I don't know whether I have anything to contribute, but in terms of if you consider as a country, for any product, any service that we need to really have here as well as export, we must have competitiveness. I think everybody will agree with that, right? Competitiveness. And that is why we are actually importing eggs from India for 35 rupees and we can't produce it for 50 rupees or 45, 50, 60 rupees or whatever. So that is because of the competitiveness. If you don't have that competitiveness, obviously we can't even have our agriculture here for our consumption. Obviously we are all globally connected. And I listened to the total factor productivity that you mentioned as well. Why we don't have the competitiveness is the productivity. So the productivity, if you consider, you talked about the technology, I don't think in Sri Lanka we consider agriculture as an industry. Right? Agriculture is an independently driven farming kind of a thing, but it's not an industry. So if you want to make an industry, we need to actually consider all these ecosystem, the policy and everything that we consider, land use policies, all that has to be considered and connected. So we are not promoting that as an industry, and that is why we have come down from 40% of GDP contribution to a 7% or 8% GDP contribution. Now we are losing grounds in that as well. So we need to promote that as an industry. So that is very important, and that is why you need to have these land use policies and all that. I also consider this research and development is definitely not happening the way that we think in agriculture. If you consider we have all the research institutions, whether it is a coconut research, paddy research, cinnamon research, or whatever the research institutions we have, for some reason the input to the research institution as well as output coming is not connected in the entire value chain. I think you have discussed that as well. This value chain, how do you create? How do you attract the best researchers, need-based research that we need to do? How do you do that? That is again a part of the ecosystem that we need to really highlight. The commercial agriculture is something that really contributes to the economy as well as our competitiveness. Then the waste control and preservation that you talked about as well, so that can add enormously to the positives of the agriculture. So I think all these, it comes ultimately to the policy, strategy and the planning, the actions that you finally highlighted. So which needs really the vision, which needs really how to strategize your vision, and then how to identify the actions and how to align all the players that we have in the value chain so that we create that kind of an ecosystem. So that needs a holistic view, and I think that is of course a multidisciplinary approach that we need to have. So that is all I can contribute, but I think together all of us will need to create that system for us to really have at least a little bit of a competitiveness in the agriculture sector. Thank you.
Thank you. That Dr. Wasanthi's paper is really not about the agriculture sector. It is only about the food crop subsector. So from this paper, of course, we can't expect the solution for the entire problem, because that she has to identify the issues and remedial actions within the existing policy framework. because it doesn't go beyond that. But we must look at what is above that, or the holistic approach. Now, how this food crop sector is fitting into the overall agriculture program, and also we discuss certain, lot of things. One thing the price distortion. That is, I think agriculture sector is worstly affected due to the price distortion. But not only in agriculture, in Sri Lanka, for any product, we cannot understand what is the real price because of the subsidies and various price distortions. For anything, the price is not known to anybody. Whatever the market price is available in the market is a distorted price. Unless we correct this price distortion, I think not only in agriculture, but even the industries will not be able to do much. And other thing that we have, when we discuss about the research, I think we have not mentioned at all about the agriculture. Under the agriculture ministry, we have something called CAP Council, Council for Agriculture Policy Research. Yes, I think that institution was created somewhere in 1987, to coordinate all the research work in the agriculture sector and to have the agriculture research policy. But I don't know whether we have any agriculture policy yet. And also I have seen this CAP Council is supporting various research work, but those are, desk work, not the type of research that the farmers are required. I think that research has to be diverted much toward the practical things to, help the farmers. What they are doing is, I have seen, those are the papers required for the postgraduate student. That's all. I think that institution must change totally to do the research what is farmers required. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of the Gamini Korea Foundation, the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, and the organizing committee, we thank all of you for joining us in this insightful roundtable session on agriculture. First and foremost, I would like to express our sincere appreciation to Dr. Wasanthi Wickramasinghe for delivering an enlightening discourse on the theme Domestic Food Crop Sector Importance, Challenges and Need for Innovation. Your expertise and in-depth research in the area have truly enriched our understanding of the critical issues and potential solutions in this sector. I would also like to thank Professor Ranjit Senaratne, the Chairman NSF, for graciously accepting the role of Session Chair. He made it very interesting. The guidance and stewardship have ensured the productive and engaging discussion. To the esteemed panelists, Dr. Herath Gunathilaka, Director of SEPA, Mr. Sisir Amarasekara, former Secretary, Dr. Frederick Aberatne, former UNDP consultant, Dr. Gamini Samarasinghe, Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture, we are immensely grateful for the valuable insight and contributions to this discussion. Your diverse perspective have shed light in various facets of the domestic food crop sector, paving the way for innovative approaches to tackling challenges. We conclude this roundtable session. Let us carry forward the insight gained today and translate them into concrete actions, and will drive positive changes in agriculture sector. I believe together we can foster innovative solutions, address challenges, and elevate importance of the domestic food crop sector for the betterment of Sri Lanka and its people. I also like to thank, last but not the least, the GSF Gamini Korea Foundation team, who has been giving an invaluable service to make this session happen, and I thank all of you for your presence today. In winding up the session, I would like to invite all of you to join the Board of Directors and the panelists for tea at the canteen. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Good evening to you.